everybody, my name is Caleb Baker, and today I'm going to be giving a speech over the topic, should prostitution be legal? At the end of this speech, the audience will be able to identify 3 reasons that prostitution should be legal. I believe that prostitution in the United States should be legalized because it can be a source of tax revenue, it will help improve the health and safety of the sex workers, and there are no victims in the act of prostitution. Sex. The physical interaction between 2 consenting adults is a largely performed activity by many Americans, but when used as a wager it is deemed illegal. This brings me to the question, should prostitution be legal? And I say yes. This is important to us because if we can have sex for free, why can't 2 consenting adults place a wager on the activities? I've decided to talk about this topic because I found of interest when looking for topics, and I've seen how legal prostitution is applied in other countries. Prostitution should be legalized in the United States because it can be a source of tax revenue. It will help to improve the health and safety of the sex workers, and there are no victims in the act of prostitution. For my first point, I'll explain how the legalization of prostitution can be a new source of tax revenue. So first off, currently the crime of prostitution is illegal, but the government could make money of the taxation of the legal prostitution. According to the Business Insider, while brothels in Nevada pay no state taxes, they pay significant amounts of tax to the rural counties where they do business, according to the New York Times. And point B, illegal prostitution businesses in America, of course, pay no taxes. If those brothels were legalized, then state and county governments could gain significant revenue. So this brings me to my second point. Why should we really care about this problem? We should really care about it because according to HavocsCope.com, the prostitution industry in the United States is currently listed at $14.6 billion, which is a lot of money if you ask me. The taxation of these $14.6 billion would bring in a lot of revenue for schools, businesses, and public buildings. According to the Washington Post, the current national debt of the United States sits at over $22 trillion with the legalization of prostitution. They bring in even more money to lower that. And then this brings me to my third problem. How serious is this problem? And the problem is really serious because of the amount of money in debt that the United States is in, and the legalization of it would tremendously help after taxation. So this brings me to point 4. What are the ramifications of this problem? Who's affected and how? So this is really going to mostly affect teachers, students, and their learning environments, as well as Americans in general. The taxation would also affect the sex workers because they wouldn't receive as much money as they're given for the government to deem it as a legal job. They should have to pay taxes on the work provided. So this brings me to point 2. The next reason that prostitution should be legal is because it would really help improve the health and safety of the sex workers. Currently, many of these sex workers aren't performing in safe, protected environments where they can commonly give or receive STDs, as well as be unsafe in the outcomes of the interactions. According to Business Insider, a study of San Francisco prostitutes found that 82% had been assaulted and 68% had been raped while working as prostitutes. Another study of prostitutes in Colorado Springs found they were 18 times more likely to be murdered than non-prostitutes their age and race. So this brings me to point B. If prostitution was legal, it could help in the safety of these women because of the oversight the government would have on these interactions, leading to safer methods of sex work. And point C, according to Business Insider, legal street prostitutes might face pressure from pimps and johns to forego condoms, but states that legalize prostitution can require sex workers to use condoms and get tested for STDs. So here's some practical real-world application in my solution. So in the city of Amsterdam, where prostitution is legal, they have set up rooms with prostitutes where people can go and pay for sex acts legally, while being monitored to ensure there's no harm that's being put onto the sex workers or the customer. This is also seen as brothels in Nevada, where everyone is monitored in order to ensure the safety of the workers and also giving disease checks and using condoms. So that leads me to exactly how this solution is going to be implemented. So the plan will be implemented by having brothels across the United States set up and run under federal law in order to ensure their use of condoms and various STD tests. And then this would also lead to safe paid sex work across the nation, bringing in taxes at the same time and benefiting the customer and working all at the same time. So the last point I'd like to talk about is that there's no real victims in the act of prostitution. So for point A, according to Business Insider, while some advocates argue that prostitutions are victims of johns and pimps, sex work can be victimless crime if women sell their bodies of their own violation. Moreover, it doesn't make sense to arrest sex workers if they aren't their own victims. Business Insider also explains that as Cornell Law professor Shelby Cole has written, prostitution should not be a crime. Prostitutes are not committing any inherently harmful act, while the spread of disease and other detriments are possible in the practice of prostitution. Criminalization is a sure way of exacerbating rather than addressing such effects. This demonstrates that these people aren't victims in any sense. They are willingly performing these sex acts with their bodies for money in return and shouldn't be arrested for doing so. So that brings me to the second point. What will happen if nothing's being done? If nothing is done, the outspread of STDs would be greater to non-regulation of paid sex work, as well as the amount of murders and assaults on sex workers in the United States. And for point B of that, prostitution is one of the oldest professions dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. Therefore, it's not going away anytime soon, so the government should take advantage of it and make money on it rather than not. So now with all of those points discussed, I'm going to go into my conclusion. I believe that prostitution in the United States should be legalized because it can be a source of tax revenue, it will help improve the health and safety of the sex workers, and there's no victims in the act of prostitution. This is important because we should help improve the health and safety of sex workers around the U.S. and not punish them for such a foolish reason. The government should take advantage of the legalization of prostitution because the amount of revenue that they could gain from the taxation. The government should take advantage of the legalization of prostitution because of the amount of revenue they could gain from the taxation of legal prostitution. It would also help improve the health and safety of these sex workers by providing them spaces to perform their work where they are monitored and also engaging in STD tests, and the enforcement of the use of condoms and the idea that there are no victims in the act of prostitution is true, leaving the only way workers could be victimized is if they are assaulted by the customer, which would be stopped if it was legalized. Sex, the action by two consenting adults, which cannot be wagered or else you could be arrested. Whatever you think of sex work should be legal. Just think about the amount of good you would be doing for these workers and how beneficial it would be for all Americans. As once said by the famous NASCAR driver Ricky Bobby, it's the fastest who gets paid and the fastest who gets laid. But in America, you can't get paid to get laid. Thank you. Now I'd like to hear your comments and questions.